2NURFM News for our sponsor Guardia Jewellery, Toronto Town Square and the Esplanade, Warners Bay.
It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Tanya du Preez with 2NURFM Hunter News. The Hunter will benefit from 116 new air defence jobs as a result of the government's recently signed contract with BAE Systems Australia. The contract, valued at $126 million, will increase operational maintenance for the Hawk Legion fighter, which prepares Air Force pilots for Hornets, Super Hornets and the Joint Strike Fighter. Bob Baldwin MP says these new jobs are vital to the local defence industry.
This new opportunity is 68 new jobs at the BAE facility at Williamtown RAF base. And it's much more economical and strategic to have this fleet well operational, well serviced, well maintained, so we can have the best trained pilots possibly have here in Australia.
William Town Hall is set to play host to a major rally tonight as residents gather to air their concerns over a proposal to triple truck movements through Nelson Bay Road. Quarry, Macca Stand, part owned by Port Stephens Mayor Bruce Mackenzie, is spruiking a 200% increase in the number of trucks permitted on the stretch each hour to 48, 3 times the 16 granted approval by the Planning Assessment Commission. Local MP Kate Washington says she's questioning divided loyalties.
I did express my concerns that there was a conflict of interest between the Mayor in his role, where his responsibility is to the community, as opposed to his role as a part owner of a sand mine. I haven't yet heard whether or not he's attending or sending a representative, so we'll just find out tonight.
Plans for the construction of over a dozen industrial units for businesses at Kooragang Island in Newcastle have been lodged today. Ranging in size up to 324 metres squared, the units will be part of a service centre expected to include a petrol station and car wash. The units will create jobs and increase the proximity of support industries to the port, according to an environmental effects statement lodged with Planning and Environment New South Wales. The party responsible for dumping 10 tonnes of building and demolitions waste at Barnsley has been identified by the Hunters Regional Illegal Dumping Squad. The waste has been tracked down to a demolished house at Mount Hutton where the perpetrator was issued a clean-up notice. Contributor Alice Howe says information from members of the public regarding illegal dumping assists them in finding offenders.
We have been able to identify the owner of that property and issue a clean-up notice. Information from the public is important to help identify those responsible for illegal dumping, and if anyone has information, they can contact the EPA hotline on 131555.
Lake Macquarie MP Greg Piper says the state government should consider putting a sinking fund into effect to ensure Bullaroo residents are not in danger of lead contamination. Recent investigations into heavy metal pollution containment around the Cockle Creek smelter site have uncovered flaws in the program, and Mr Piper says residents should not bear the burden into the future. Mr Piper says effective soil management is still a major concern.
We really do need to come up with a sensible solution. So the proposition that's come up is, I understand, and perhaps Newcastle City Council might provide a repository for that material. I think that would be possibly a good solution. What we're looking at here now and what we're hearing sounds much more reasonable.
A cheque of $442,000 was presented to the Calvary Martyr Newcastle by the Auxiliary at the annual general meeting last night. The donations will go towards buying new hospital equipment for cancer patients, including a stem cell freezer, scalp cooling machine and bladder scanner. The Auxiliary continue to raise funds and support the hospital, which would not be possible without support from the community. Closures along Spears Point's Cockle Creek Bridge are continuing this afternoon as work wraps up on a cathodic protection system aimed at preventing corrosion. The southbound lane on Five Islands Road will be closed between the Esplanade roundabout and Northern Bridge Arm for another half an hour, with a 40-kilometre speed limit in place along one lane. David Naidu from Roads and Maritime Services says motorists should heed the traffic warnings.
Most of the work is being carried out from a barge in Cockle Creek, so there isn't much of an impact to traffic. But some short-term lane closures will be required for certain sections of the bridge to be re-concreted. One lane of the bridge will remain open with traffic control and a temporary 40-kilometre-per-hour speed limit in place to keep the workers and motorists safe.
In finance, the All Ords is down 81 points at 55.19, and $1 Australian is buying 73.75 US cents.
Sport for our sponsor, Warners Bay Sports Club Fishing Expo, September 13.
The Newcastle Jets have cleared out Chief Executive Mitchell Murphy and could be looking at Stephen Thompson as a potential new buyer. The millionaire chairman of Scottish Premier League club Dundee United has reportedly emerged as a main contender, but FFA officials insist there are still others in the running. The club intends to sell before the October season starts. Knights coach Danny Badiris says the risk is too high for prop Cade Snowden in this Sunday's run-in with the Roosters. Snowden is still battling post-concussion symptoms after last week's loss to the Dragons, and is not expected to be cleared in time for the game. Meanwhile, David Folongo and Carlos Tumavahi will be assessed for injury at training on Saturday. And 4 Hunter athletes have scored medals at the Special Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Swimmers Kieran Corey and Jordan Brown snared gold in the freestyle relay. Vasey sailor Melissa Nelson took first place in team sailing, and Jared Lantry grabbed silver with the Australian football team. That's sport. I'm Tyler Fidel.
2NURFM news time is 2:05.